We're back with Indigo Studio, and I'm Hermine Hartman, and we are going to talk to Deon'te Goodman. He's back in Chicago, back on Hamilton. Hamilton coming to Chicago, not for its first run, but for its second run, where it was so successful in Chicago. Deon'te is a classically trained singer and has appeared in the Broadway production of Hamilton, not in one role, but in 4. He was the understudy for the role that he's playing now, and that is Aaron Burr. We're going to learn a lot about Aaron Burr, who he was and what he did, what his significance is, because he's really kind of an obscure character of history who had a real major role. Let's talk about you first. How did you become classically trained singer?
Right. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here.
Thank you.
Excited to sit and chat with you.
And welcome to Chicago.
Thank you so much. I grew up singing in the church, as most young black singers do. Thanks to my mom, you know, church boy, and just went along that route. My music teachers were and still are a huge reason why I am doing any of this today. They got me into my first musical when I was in 6th grade. They brought me to my competitions because, you know, my mom was a single mom raising 6 kids.
What was your first musical?
My first musical was The Music Man.
The Music Man,
Music
okay.
Man.
Okay.
I was Harold Hill, just leading a band of trumpets and trombones and everything.
That was fun.
It was quite fun. It was quite fun to play the con artist a bit. But yeah, so my music teachers brought me to my competitions and sort of like raised me up in the world of musical theater. And I really just wanted to explore more of what I can do as a singer, you know? And so when I went to school, one of my music teachers was like, well, you should look at University of North Carolina at Greensboro, because at the time we had moved to North Carolina. And they had an incredible classical program. And at the time, I didn't know anything about classical music. I know about pop, I know about R&B, I know about gospel. But for some reason, they decided to accept me anyway. And it was my first look at training classically. It was my first look at having a voice teacher. It was my first look at learning about Western European culture and just the style of voicing that is. And I learned so much just about my voice and how to be a better teacher and a better singer and performer. And I, you know, cherish my time there with my voice teachers, LaVon Tobin Scott, powerful black woman, and Carla Lefevre, who was my second voice teacher there, and yeah, taught me everything I know.
How did we get to Hamilton?
Well, I have to tell you about the first time I heard a song from Hamilton. The first song that I ever heard from Hamilton was in 2015. It was the song Burn. And I had just been going through a breakup. And if you know anything about that song, it is just a heart-wrenching number where Eliza sings about her reaction to the Reynolds pamphlet that Alexander writes. And to explore the feeling and hearing the emotion that Philippa put into that number, it was just heart-wrenching for me. So I remember my friend was like, you have to hear this song. And I heard it and I fell in love with it. And then the very next day I said, well, what is this show? And then the next song I played was the Schuyler Sisters.
Wow.
And I got such a Destiny's Child type vibe from it that I fell in love with the show. And then I had to listen to it from top to bottom.
Well, the show is incredible.
I mean,
in more ways than one. I mean,
absolutely.
you're talking about the emotion of the music itself, but to take the founding fathers and think that you could characterize them in theater, I think just that thought is absolutely amazing.
It's amazing and ambitious, and I'm sure that people looked at Lin-Manuel Miranda like, what do you think you're doing?
That's right.
Yeah,
what are you doing?
I mean, but he had a vision, and it plays so well. It's genius the way that he's able to take, you know, this history that we know, these monuments that we know, and to paint the human beings that we see today, using the music that is built from Black culture and Latinx culture and you know and hip hop and you know also got to shout out the fact that hip hop just celebrated its 50th birthday.
That's right.
You know,
this year, no less.
Exactly. But being able to marry history in that way and the music that is so naturally ingrained in our upbringing is, I mean, just phenomenal.
One of the things that amazes about Hamilton is it confronts slavery.
Yeah.
All of the founding fathers had black children. They had black
Yeah.
families.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. What, as you have played 4 different roles in Hamilton, talk about those roles.
So I played Madison.
You played George
I
Washington.
played George Washington. I played Aaron Burr. And then my 4th role was ensemble role, Man 6.
Let's talk about Aaron Burr, because I did some research on Aaron Burr, and he is an obscure character in our history, but quite major. Talk about who Aaron Burr was and what he did.
Yeah, so Aaron Burr had quite the journey, and the more I learn about him, the more I read about him, the more I'm just fascinated by the human being. I mean, first of all, a scholar, absolutely incredible. Was accepted at Princeton as a sophomore at the age of 13. And then went on to, even after his studies, studied theology. And then when the Revolutionary War became, much more prominent, he decided to put his studies of law and theology aside, and to join the fight. And then beyond that, went on to serve in the Senate, went on to be vice president, and serve 1 term as vice president. After losing an election, to a major historical election, to Thomas Jefferson.
But he changed. That's when he changed the 12th Amendment.
Well, so we can talk about that, right?
So what did he do? What happened?
So Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr ran against each other. And back in that time, when you were running an election, and whoever lost, whoever was the runner-up, became the vice president. That's just how it went. The winner of the presidency became the president, the runner-up became the vice president. The election between Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr, it was an electoral tie. It was a tie between the Electoral College, and so the Electoral College eventually voted Jefferson, and what Jefferson did was sideline Burr. And in the story we tell it, and in the show of Hamilton, we tell it as Jefferson wanted to sideline Burr because he was just so shocked and offended that Burr even would openly campaign against Thomas Jefferson, because that was unheard of. Nobody openly campaigned. You going door to door, passing out pamphlets saying, "Vote for Burr. I'm Aaron Burr. Vote for me. Here's what I'm going to do for you." It's something that's it's the way that elections are done now. But
not then.
Back then, it was revolutionary.
So he kind of maybe introduced what we call now retail politics?
Yeah, absolutely. I would 1,000% say that. So, but what Jefferson did in his sidelining of Burr during the presidency was he was the one to implement a president or someone running for president choosing their running mate. So they were both very historic and sort of ratifying that 12th Amendment in the Constitution. But,
and that's a major part of our history. So one of the things in looking at the founding fathers, they were scholars.
Yeah.
They were smart. They were educated. They
and young.
And they really were founding fathers. And we transfer that into today.
Yeah.
It's quite the opposite. How do you deal with Hamilton confronting slavery? Is it an honest portrayal?
It's as honest as it can be with the story that they're working to tell. Speaking honestly from my first look at the show before I was in it, I wondered how so many black people and people of color could reconcile, playing these founding fathers, playing these people who owned slaves, playing these people who had such a huge part in the genocide of black people. And it's still something that I think a lot of us tend to question, and you have to find your own way to make sense of it, right? What makes sense for me is that I look at the show, I look at the story being told, I look at who's telling it, and it reminds me that black people, that this country was built on the backs of black people.
You played George Washington.
Exactly.
And that's like, how's a black man playing George?
Exactly.
So
exactly.
That has
and so when you're out in the audience and you have that black kid that's staring at me lead
Playing
a
George
country,
Washington.
playing George Washington, running a country.
He's the president, first president.
Exactly.
Barack wasn't the first president.
Exactly.
He was the first. Yeah.
Exactly.
That goes on.
It goes on, and it paints the story. For what I hope that it does for them is exactly what it does for me. It painted the story of like, okay, we're telling the story of the people who built this country, and they look like us. You know what I'm saying?
And it's a real story.
And it's a real story, and it gives voice in a way that I don't think I ever felt that I had voice.
Right.
You also think about how the phenomenon that is Hamilton, the phenomenon that it became. I mean, you think about the Broadway. You have the Broadway show, and then you have the Chicago production. Then you have 3 national tours. Then you have, the production in the UK, the production in Germany, the production that they're about to launch in Asia. And you think about the amount of Black people and people of color that are being put to work, that are being given opportunities that did not exist before.
In the theater.
That did not exist before. You think about the way that this is sort of that Hamilton revolutionized and exposed so many different audiences to music that they probably wouldn't listen to.
As they told a real authentic history.
Exactly.
So let's go back to Burr, because Burr did something else.
Yeah.
What is Burr really known for? Because it's not the 12th Amendment.
It's not the 12th. Burr is really known for what they call now the Burr-Hamilton duel.
That was the duel.
That was the duel where he shot Alexander Hamilton, and that sort of plummeted his entire political career.
He killed Hamilton.
He killed Hamilton. In those days, it's illegal, but Burr was never tried for it. And we have this line in the show when Hamilton's son is getting ready to duel. There's a line in the show that says everything is legal in New Jersey, and that's sort of I like to think of that as sort of a play on like these human beings, they were never tried for Burr was tried and charged for other things, but never that duel where he killed.
Not the murder of Hamilton.
Not the murder of Hamilton.